Welcome to VolleyTalk alongside Mirson Austin. I'm Elliot Skelly. Join us today, the head coach of the Moeller Crusaders, Casey Pieper. Coach, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. So you were originally a three-year varsity starter at Moeller, won a state championship in 2012, and then you played in college and eventually returned under Lee Myers, the freshman team head coach in 2021. Can you talk about your path kind of through volleyball after graduation that led you back to Moeller as a coach?
Yeah. Moeller's an amazing place and the volleyball program's such a great family. And I really ended up back before Lee got there, when Matt was still the head coach because I was given the opportunity to play in Spain with a couple friends of mine in a tournament. And I said, I should probably get back in the gym and play a little bit. So I asked Matt if I could play against the guys, and he let me come back and play. And then when Lee got back the next year, he asked if I'd help out.
When you look at the start of your time at Moeller, obviously in 2021, that entire three-peat era, how valuable to find to work under such a successful Moeller staff back then?
I mean, Lee and his staff is awesome. Obviously, Dan, having been there pretty much from the beginning and having so many state championships and knowing what was going on, and Lee being the volleyball mind that he was, Volan being just a great athlete and having played in college and all of that stuff, and then even Gus with his Moeller experience. It's a learning experience to be under and to also just work with.
For sure. And then at the 2023 season, a lot of those coaches, including Lee Meyer, stepped away to pursue other things. When you got the job as the head coach, what process of building the staff back up look like?
Well, the guys that were in the program were already great guys. I mean, uh, Jared Engelhart running the JV, he was there when I was there the whole time. Jake Schaefer was with me at the freshman level, and so I definitely want to keep him. And Bill Eckhoff, obviously, still with me. A great volleyball mind working with me and Lee the past couple years at a D with Greg Euland and Joe and all those guys over there. Um, really a great group. And then the only part filling really was the freshman coach's position, which has always traditionally been a Moeller alum, just because they know better than anybody else what it's like to be a volunteer at Moeller. And so it was really important to find some great guys. And Brody Threm, who came in and from having just graduated and obviously winning state a few years in a row. And then Mav Owens was a guy that in my interviews with the Moeller staff, the hiring staff, when they asked who I would bring in, that was the first name that came up. He was a great guy at Moeller. I knew him at Dayton. Just a really awesome human being. He's done a great job with the freshmen.
Now, you started your season with a try against Mount Vernon and Ignatius, finished 1-1 in the day. And then you had a pretty dominant win over Fenwick and then a close loss to Elder. What are your thoughts on your team's performance so far to start the season?
Well, we are trying to find our voice right now as a team. Having had few multi-year starters leave last Gesselbrock, Yachts, Markham, and guys have been there for careers like Eli Ernst. It's tough for a team to really find what their identity is. William is a force, and he was on that team, but he was really almost second fiddle to those guys in leadership, um, except in through his play. And so now we're trying to find those guys and how they can bring out the best in the team and lead the team themselves. So that's really the big thing that I think we're trying to find is just some big position fills, but also who wants to step up and who wants to be the person on the court that is leading the charge.
Now you've got LaSalle coming up, who you'll actually play the day before this episode is on Thursday. And it's a chance to redeem yourselves in GCL play once again on the road. And especially since you got to experience this conference as a player, how much does it mean to you to represent such a storied and competitive league?
I mean, the GCL is awesome as volleyball, and it's easy to see with how many times a GCL team has played in the state finals, won the state, or even played each other. As a player and bringing that now to teaching my guys, it's interesting because I had a lot of success at my I graduated with a really great class and only ended up losing, I think, twice in GCL play. And one of those games I didn't even actually play was the state finals against Elder my freshman year. The only other loss I actually had was against LaSalle my freshman year on the varsity at LaSalle. Was the only other time I think I ever dropped a game in GCL play. And so, it's been tough, and it always is tough. Every game is like that. Knowing Elder hadn't won because they played Worthington and St. X Louisville, and then they came in and played as good as they had played according to their coaches. And it's a GCL, and anybody can win on any given day. So you got to be ready to play when you're when you step into the gym.
Definitely. Now, you come from a long line of great coaches at Moeller, 11 state championships, started with Dan Brakeman, then Greg Uland, Matt McLaughlin, as you mentioned, then Lee Meyer. Do you take inspiration from those guys as you try to emulate them in your coaching style?
Yeah, actually, one of the best things that happened as after I got the coaching job is I got to have dinner with Greg Uland, and we just chatted about things and was going. Lee's always available. I see Matt around. Obviously, he's with Kings right now, so we don't chat as much. But I take the lessons I learned from them, and I know that they're always out there to if I need it, to ask a question or what's going on. I mean, they did such a good job and ran the program so well that I'm just trying to do what I can to give the guys the same experience that I got from those guys.
Now, you got the Centerville Elite Eight tournament coming up in a few weeks. The future state champion's pretty much always in that. How much stock do you think you put into those tournament results?
Well, uh, it's as we like to say, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And while Moeller in the past, especially in that three-peat state run, never really finished the best. I mean, I don't think we ever beat X in the regular season, struggled against Elder that first year. Um, they just found a way to make it work in the end. So while those results are important to know halfway through the season what you have and how you stack up, it's what you learn from that and how you apply it in the later half of your season to fix any mistakes, get the right guys on the court, and make a good game plan to make a run.
That's saying not how you start, that's how you finish. I think that's probably Lee Meyer's slogan because in that three-peat, not only did Moeller never win at the Centerville Elite Eight, I don't even think they made the finals once, and they won the state championship all 3 years. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and you talked about earlier about putting guys on the court. You got 20 guys in your varsity squad this year, according to your website. All of them either juniors or seniors, as I look at it right now. And, that's more than the postseason maximum of 15. What's the thought behind having such a large roster this year?
Well, my philosophy has always been find a reason to keep somebody, not a reason to let them go. And I know that you can only have 15 at the end of the year, and I know that I'm not going to be able to get everybody in every game, but the guys that I had, I actually cut two players, and I hated every second of it. It just you never know what's going to happen. A couple of the guys actually last year when I had 18, some of the guys that were probably my last few on, who I probably would have cut, ended up making big contributions. And so I just I want to give the guys a chance. You never know what's going to happen. If somebody gets hurt, if somebody decides to step up, or a junior decides, hey, you know what? Didn't like it last year. I'm just not going to play this year or this next year. And so I let somebody else go that would need to fill that spot. I just hate having that opportunity. Plus, like I said, the opportunity of getting to play and being in the Moeller family is just a great experience. And so I want to make sure I extend that to as many people as possible. So not just that I have 20, but my JV has 17. Freshman's a little smaller this year at 12, but I've had two programs or two seasons now with around 53 kids. Just trying to keep as many guys involved to do that. And then also practice wise, I can run three teams and do drills with high intensity where the teams battle and the losing team's off, winning team's on, and I've got enough players. I don't have to mix things around. It's just plug and go. And so it really just gives us the options at practice to have a lot. It is a lot of work, and there's a lot of guys who uh, need work, and obviously nobody's perfect, and it takes a little bit of effort to get them all in there, but I think it's worth it.
Definitely. Well, looking ahead, you got a try with New Albany McNick coming up, a couple more GCL matches, Elite Eight tournament. What are you kind of hoping to see from your team as we get into this midseason stretch of the season?
We need to find some fight, and we need to find a way to not make errors at the end of sets. Talked about the last 2 weeks having lost to Iggy, and then obviously to Elder is seems fairly close. The game against St. Ives wasn't as close the first two, but then we pulled it a little bit closer in that third. But just kind of neck and neck at 18 points or something like that, and then it's just three or four errors at the end of the match, and you can't have that. And so we're still, like I said, trying to find who it should be out on that court, who wants to be out on the court, and who's going to be willing to take the swing and be successful. And so the biggest thing we're looking at is how do we play against this good? What what do they show? Who makes the pass? Who makes the swing? And who's calling for it? Who really is saying, I'm going to be that? And then that way we can build on that group in practices and help um, fine tune their skills for the end of the year.
100%. Well, hey, man, thanks for coming on. Good luck with the rest of your season. Seems like you're doing a great job. Looking forward to see you continue that Moeller legacy.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
All right, that was Casey Pieper. Always nice to get GCL guys on. Moeller, just such a cool program, so really cool to see what he's doing. Sorry, getting into some of the games from last week. Last Friday, San X had a pretty easy sweep of LaSalle.
Now Colin Brick. He'll float. Picked up by Benjamin Solori. Ball will go to Mateo Armat. Oh!
Really surprising result that neither of us saw coming, especially not in this fashion. Elder sweeps Moeller. So after Elder's kind of rocky start against Louisville St. X Thomas Worthington, to come out and perform that way against Moeller, it was not something I was expecting. And really, it wasn't even, didn't feel like an upset. Elder was kind of ahead the whole time. I mean, obviously it was competitive, but, they were in control of that match.
Great serve, but there by Kelly. A big block by Ben Spinagle. My goodness, Spinagle.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think Elder was in front and they set the tone early, which was something that we kind of sort of saw last week to some extent against Thomas Worthington, but really against Louisville St. X, where they really brought it to the Tigers early. And then you take them against a team like Moeller and, things work out possibly a little bit easier. And again, credit to them. They played a really good offense. They forced Moeller into mistakes. And as that game went along, whether it was just the team, whether it was momentum, or even the gym in general, it seemed like momentum was going in favor of Elder and things were working in their favor. And that's something you want to see too. We talked about this last week that a lot of these teams, including St. X and Moore, are starting to get their way at Elder. That home court advantage is not what it used to be. So credit to Sean Tierney and crew for getting that home win and really setting the tone early.
100%. On the other side of GCL, we had St. X head to Berlin, and they had strong 2-0 wins over Berlin, Stowe, and Liberty. Berlin beat Stowe, and then had a tough loss against Liberty, and then Stowe beat Liberty. So, and then we'll talk about Berlin also just last night, got reverse swept Derby. So, kind of this tough Berlin team to figure out. I think, this weekend there's a quad that we'll talk about that we'll kind of get a better idea of them. But, I don't know. I mean, I thought their win against Davidson was nice. And we kind of missing Monahan, but yeah, I don't know. What do you think about this Berlin team?
I think they're good. I think they're still relatively a top 10 team. And again, obviously, the one question going into the season was Liberty, right? We didn't know what they were going to look like after basically graduating their entire team from last year. At least they're starting six. So you're rebuilding this team from scratch. And again, I think Berlin, especially knowing that they're in this region and they're hosting this squad, they gotta step up, right? You know St. X is going to be the best team there. They showed that they were the best team there, basically handling every game they played. But I don't know. The Bears are in a little bit of trouble early, and obviously I think we're going to find out more about them when they play the likes of Pick North and others to really kind of see where they are in Region 1.
We had a try with Ignatius Jerome and Beaver Creek. Ignatius easy sweep of Jerome, like 25-9 set three. Beat Beaver Creek in four, but I don't know. If you look at the set scores, it was like 15-16, and they dropped the third set. So I don't know. I wonder if they put backs in it. I don't think there was anything to examine there. And then Beaver Creek over Jerome in four. So maybe we see Beaver Creek come out as a team to look at. I'm not really sure there. We had Mount Vernon that Friday lose to Waterson in five, and then lost to Fenwick in four. So, kind of getting an idea of where they're at in Division Two. Obviously, still a competitive team, and I don't know. We'll kind of see what comes of that. And then the other Saturday event we had was Pick North, Jackson, St. Ed's, and Davidson. Pick North, big story is they beat everybody, so they're still undefeated. Now Davidson is just tough to figure out without Ryan Monahan. Again, like he's their main guy, the guy who, could be contending for first team All-State. He didn't have him against Berlin. They didn't have him with this squad. So it's really tough for me to figure out where this team's at. But it's also true that without him, they really don't have any quality wins that deserve to put them in the top 10. So they fell out of both our top 10s. Jackson swept St. Ed's and Davidson, and they played Pick North very close, 25-23, both sets. Just a best of three game. So we could see them as a potential challenger for St. Ignatius in the North. Talk about they'll play soon. So some interesting results in that quad.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I mean, we talked about this beginning of the season. Who was going to be that number two to St. Ignatius with Brecksville Broadview gone and going back to Division Two? Obviously, for me, I thought it was going to be Stowe Monroe, and we're seeing how that pick has panned out to start the season. But credit to Jackson. I mean, and just credit in general to both Division One, Division Two. We're starting to see more parity as, a lot of competition happens, but credit to Jackson overall. You get the win against St. Ed's and then you beat Davidson too. You got teams that are either on the fringe of getting into the top 10 or are in the top 10 right now. It warrants the case that you should be in the running as well. And we've seen Jackson, go in and out of our rankings in 2023, 2024. Sometimes they could be as high as like a three seed or two seed. We put them as high in those categories in Region 2. So credit to them and what they're doing. And let's see if they can keep it up.
So in Division Two, we saw Alter sweep Carroll and then beat Bishop Fenwick in five. So they were not a team that we had in our top 10, but they're, making a statement. I don't know about the Carroll win, but definitely the Fenwick win is something to look at. Walsh Jesuit sweeps Hoban, and St. Vincent St. Mary swept Independence. And then we saw Moeller over LaSalle in four sets. LaSalle took the first set, but I don't know. I've never been there, but I've talked with Bill Ferris about it, and I've seen like stuff about like there was a Moeller team that I think their one loss was to a LaSalle in their gym, and it's like I think it's the low ceiling that gets a lot of teams. So I don't know that I'm necessarily looking at that four set win. I think I got to see a little more to know about LaSalle, but I don't know. Maybe a result to look for there.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how LaSalle's gym is. It is a low gym because they play it at, relatively speaking, basketball height. It's only one story. So that's just how it is. I mean, that's the toughest thing about playing at LaSalle. And those games have also gotten St. X of late, too. We have
Yeah.
rarely seen St. X go into LaSalle and sweep the Lancers. That's just how that gym works. And I mean, that's a good home court advantage, so to speak, for the Lancers. So again, that's what happens at times in the GCL. And credit to Moeller for getting through it. And I think we need to see them against other competition. I think Elder would be a nice rematch. St. X obviously could really set the tone on who's the top dog in the GCL.
I remember I played at Baden once, and they had the same low ceilings. Not a fan. And then we also saw Berlin reverse sweep Darby, which we talked about. So kind of, first OCC Cardinal matchup, I believe, kind of starting to set the tone there. So I don't know. I think like with Darby's coaching staff, I think it's likely that they keep advancing and they keep teaching their guys, and they're going to be more of a contender later on. They're not there yet, obviously. So we'll see how they continue to develop.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the idea that they got reverse swept, and I think at the end of the day, Berlin is probably the more experienced team, and They're the team that is, more likely to make a run. But credit Derby for fighting, right? Credit them to, getting out early, getting out to a 2-0 lead. And I think more importantly, it's a big switch from what we saw against Pick North, right? Because we saw some of these results for Derby early on, and we were thinking this team just isn't it, right? We both of them had them in the top 10, and to see them kind of progress overall, that's a good sign for them because this was a team that we thought was really going to, go out in this Region 3 and really challenge Thomas Worthington in general. I mean, you look at that Mount Vernon loss, it was 3-1. Then they lose to Pick North 3-0. And, you look at the score of that 25-22, 25-17, 25-17. Darby's starting to pick up some wins. They're starting to get some momentum. I mean, you look at their most recent stretch before the Berlin loss. It was Liberty in 4, Bradley in 5, Pick Central in 3. So they've started turning it around over the past week or so and really get some momentum in their eyes.
So now we look ahead to some matches. Tonight we'll see Elder host St. X. Now, this was not that big of a match last week, but now that Elder's beaten Moeller, this is, the two top dogs in GCL, the two 1-0 teams. So this is a pretty big match. If Elder can knock off X, it will shake up a lot of things. And also Centerville Elite Eight seeding implications. So right now with Berlin's win over Derby, it's probably Centerville at the 8, then Derby, then Berlin, then probably Moeller, Elder, Thomas or Ignatius at the 2 or 3, and then X at 1. That's probably where we're at right now. So with an Elder win over X, though, that throws a lot of that off. And of course, we don't know exactly how those seedings would be determined. That would be what makes the most logical sense to me. But I think they've had coaches vote on it in the past, so who knows? Yeah, but some big implications for that one.
Yeah, definitely. And like again, we've talked to coaches about what goes into seating. They tend to keep it in-house. They just talk amongst themselves and really decide it that way. And you look at how Elder's playing right now and the fact that, Ignatius and Thomas are going to be your 2-3 punch. Even if Elder doesn't beat St. X, if they can be competitive, if this is a game that takes them to a set 5, maybe we have them, as a 4 seed or a 5th seed, right? And that 4 seed can give you a little bit of momentum. Now, we have seen at Centerville Elite Eight where we have a 6 seed or whoever make a run. We've seen that with Olentangy Liberty and other teams. So it's not the case that if you're stuck in 1 seed, if you're in a 6 or 7, that you can't pull an upset. We've seen that over the past couple of years. But I think especially knowing where this Elder team was a couple of years ago and last year, if you can get a win against St. X, it's safe to say that I think this Panthers team is back and they can contend for Region 4.
I agree with you, but it's also true that when you put the second best team as the 6th seed for no reason, that is kind of like they're going to be bound to make a run. So I don't know. That is part of it too. We got Darby versus Davidson. If Monahan is back, this should be a good litmus test for both teams. I mean, if Davidson can't take down Darby with Monahan, that they probably got some problems. If Darby is not at least competitive with Davidson team with Monahan, then they still got some work to do. So we'll kind of get a good idea. If Monahan isn't back, we really can't take away much from this game. That next Saturday, got a quad with Pick North, Berlin, Mount Vernon, and Beaver Creek. So a lot of big stuff there. I mean, does Pick North keep on their trajectory, stay undefeated? Can Berlin bounce back? Can Mount Vernon bounce back? Can Beaver Creek come out and surprise us? Maybe get some wins. I don't know. A lot of storylines going into that one.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it from this perspective. You have a Beaver Creek team that pulled off a set against St. Ignatius, and we just called it a fluke. This is the weekend to prove that it was not the fluke. And Pick North overall, I mean, we've said earlier that this is going to be one of the best, if not the best team in Region 1. And they're going up against Berlin in Region 1 and a former Region 1 opponent in Mount Vernon, who is, again, I think just building their stock with every win they can get in Division 1. So for them, Mount Vernon, if they can, not be in the basement at the end of this quad, that should be a good result for them, especially after the past result in Division 2 where they did lose to Fenwick. If they can get a little bit of pep in their step, that can help them as well.
Then we got McNick hosting a try with Moeller in New Albany. So potential rebound for Moeller, like we were talking with Case Pieper about kind of trying to find their identity. New Albany, maybe some prove it matches, like kind of on the fringe. Do you deserve to be, a little more talked about? Then there's a chance for McNick to just demonstrate they deserve to be number 1 in D2. Now, if you ask me, I don't think that means they have to beat Moeller, but they got to beat New Albany and they got to be competitive with Moeller. We saw last year like they went to St. X and got kind of beat down. But it's like you walk away and you're like, all right, well, we're not never gonna have to see anyone as good as them. Then you go win the state championship. So you just gotta just prove that you can hang with them. I think.
Yeah, and we've seen that before with a lot of different teams in Division Two. Now, some of them you look at a team like Baden 3 years ago, who, or rather, I think it was 4 years ago there, where they actually beat St. X at home. But that's a
Oh
part
yeah.
of Division Two life where you're going up against these teams. You know you're probably going to get beat, but if you can take a set, you can be competitive. I think the biggest question here is how is New Albany going to fare? Because that New Albany Moeller game. From the way I see it, it should be a Moeller sweep unless, we get some interesting results and just looking at the player makeups in general, if something goes wrong there. New Albany McNick could be something, maybe not really. So I think it's that McNick Moeller, and I think if the Rockets are trying to reschedule, you're on title defense and you're in a Region 8 that could get a bit stronger with LaSalle. I think it's especially important that you try to not just schedule in region, but also schedule out of it.
But I'm pretty excited about this next event, the CCL Challenge. So we've seen the OCC Challenge, we've seen the GCL Challenge. I was talking with Ned Gruby the other day over text. This is the CCL Challenge, new this year. So we got the four CCL Central Catholic League teams: St. Charles, St. Francis de Sales, Bishop Watterson, and Bishop Hartley. And then we've got Carroll, St. Vincent, St. Mary, Walsh, and LaSalle coming to play them. So each team will play two matches. CCL team will play an away team, and away team will play a CCL team. So should be pretty cool. We'll get kind of a pretty good picture of a lot of D2 there. So I'm pretty excited about that. I love when they do these like multi-team events that aren't necessarily tournaments, but like, you got a bunch of teams coming to one place. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I think you look at the fact that each team plays two matches, so you're going to have a little bit of parity. And I think that just overall, I mean, you look at these teams in this tournament. I mean, St. Charles, pretty good. We have them as, a front runner in Region 5. LaSalle could be trouble in Region 8. STVM could be the top dog in Region 6. Walsh is right behind them. These are teams that could be contending for a state title come May. And then obviously you have teams that are trying to prove themselves, right? Like Carroll. Carroll hasn't been in our top 10, I think, since we started this back in 2023. And, Hartley and Watterson. Hartley is kind of sort of not seen it. Watterson has at times. So these are teams that, you don't often see that much. And I think if we do see some sort of upset, that's going to raise a lot of eyebrows and I think overall give some parity to Division Two. And that's something that we haven't seen that much in that division. We've seen a lot of teams that really dominated times and other times, say for Region 8, where we've gotten to points in saying, all right, well, this is a free-for-all, but everywhere else it's pretty much set in stone. So if if things go to chalk, I'm not surprised. But if not, that could be a really good calling card for what this division could bring this year.
You got Elder traveling to Dakota East. Obviously that's a big matchup for both teams. Kind of depends on how Elder St. X goes, but even if it doesn't, I mean, Elder, proven that they are a level above Lakota East. Lakota East trying to make a name for themselves. Obviously GCL teams historically have been pretty dominant, but Lakota East been making some waves recently. So I don't know. We could see something big out of them this year.
Yeah, and I think you look at that a little bit of a rivalry too. Elder facing Lakota East or Lakota West. A lot of these games tend to be relatively close. So I think for Elder, especially if they play St. X close, this is a trap game for them. They got to be careful to make sure they don't let their guard down, especially on the road against an East team that, again, hasn't faced a lot of competition. We've had them in their top 10 to start the year, but. That's pretty much it. So it's a good test for Lakota East, and they're going in saying that this is one of the biggest tests of the weekend. Meanwhile, Elder, I think especially based off what we could see on Friday, it could be interesting to see if they let their guard down.
I think we mentioned last episode, Lakota East went to the pit, swept Elder last year. So they're looking to keep that going. Elder maybe looking for some revenge. We got Berlin hosting Thomas Worthington in a conference matchup. So probably top two teams in that conference, kind of trying to, establish a pecking order there. Then we got St. Charles to Sales, a CCL matchup. So some big rivalries coming out of that one. And then next day we got Moeller also playing Lakota East. So another, big couple day stretch for Lakota East to see if they can prove themselves. Moeller obviously wanted to get some momentum, put them away. We got X playing McNick. So battle of state champions of last year. See how that one goes. And again, a competitive loss for McNick here is a huge win. I mean, we talk about moral victories. I know some coaches are like moral victories don't matter. But it's like, all right, well, when we're looking at a team that fundamentally you're not going to have to play or be as good as by the time postseason comes, if you can play well against them and still lose, like it's a good moral victory, I think, in that situation. And then Thursday we got Jackson playing Ignatius. Is there a competition in the North? That's we're going to get an idea there. If this is another easy sweep for Ignatius, I think, pack it up. Just wait for Ignatius to head to state. There's not much else that's going to happen. But if Jackson can give him a fight, maybe take a set or two, maybe win, shakes up a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting games overall. I think the biggest thing is the St. X McNick game is going to be at McNick. And we talked earlier about different Division One, Division Two results. That's where we can maybe see a little bit of parity. This McNick side's been pretty solid to start off this season. And, especially having that home court advantage against a team like St. X, the expectation going into that game might be to take a set. It might be to be competitive, right? It's not going to be a three-set loss as we saw last year between these two sides and just GCL opponents in general. So I think it's McNick's playing with house money. I mean, they still are playing with house money, but I think there's an internal expectation for them to go out and really set the tone and really make a message, especially early in the first set. We've seen that at times with St. X, where they've gone to a place like Centerville or Beaver Creek, and they've dropped the first set just based off, competition and getting into the game, and then we see the Bombers really take over. So, not sure if we're going to get one of those games on Wednesday, but it should be interesting.
All right, so taking a look at our Division One rankings. Not a whole lot's changed. We still got that same 2-3 difference, but they'll play each other soon enough, so we'll get that result. Pick North, we can talk about them. Just a little difference of opinion. I have them below Elder Moeller. You've got them above Elder Moeller. So, what are your thoughts on Pick North?
I think it goes back to the fact that they've started the year 8-0 and they've come in really strong into this season and they've looked like the one team that really wants to pick their way through Region 1 and even though that region it might arguably speaking be the weakest region at least when it comes to contenders, Pick North is still the contender. They're still out and about and they're still winning these games for the most part pretty handily. I mean, the only blips you could say on their record, losing to Westerville North last week on March 20th, or rather beating Westerville North, but it was in five, so a little bit of a questionable result. And then St. Ed's, but still, St. Ed's has done a really good job to start their season as well. So again, I mean, outside the Westerville North result, Pick North has still done a good job to start this season.
Yep, and then we just got, 7-8 Lakota East, Olentangy, Berlin. So again, like I just think with this quad this week, with Pick North and Berlin, Mount Vernon, Beaver Creek, we'll get a really good idea of where those teams are at. So yeah, not a whole lot changed in D1. Biggest thing is Jackson breaking the top 10, coming in at number 9, and then St. Ed's at 10. So some teams in the north starting to break their way into. And then in Division Two, looks like we got a top four nailed down. McNick, St. Mary, St. Charles, and then Alter. I mean, historically one of the great, or no, sorry, historically the greatest team in Division Two, with Craig Erford won like 5 in a row or something like that, something ridiculous. So they're coming back up into the top four. Then I've got South five. You got them at 9. Both got Fenwick. Pretty up high. They lost to Alter, but I still think based on how they're playing, they're a good team. Beat Mount Vernon. We got Walsh Jesuit.
Need to update our online score here. We sit at 9-5.
Yeah, I mean, kind of starting to get a top 5 or 6 nailed down, and then some fringe teams coming through. Any thoughts on your Division Two rankings?
Yeah, I mean it's the same of what we were saying earlier and what you just said that we got a top four nailed down and more importantly, out of all people, number four is Alter. I mean, credit to them for getting that win against Fenwick, a team that again, outside of McNick, should be that team in Region 8. And again, you look at Alter's history. This is a team that won, if I'm not mistaken, three consecutive at around the mid 2010s. So it's been a while that since they've returned to glory. And that's something that, we've talked about. And, when the OBS VCA records were available, that was kind of part of the lore, if you will, with teams, going to Alter. And Alter was just, I mean, simply put, unstoppable in Division Two competition. So it's glad to see them back and about. I mean, I'm looking down at the bottom part of this list. You look at LaSalle, I mean, we have a little bit of discrepancy on how good the Lancers could be overall. And I think seeing them against Division Two competitions might help overall. They like to schedule these Division Two comp, even when they're in Division One. I mean, they like
Yep.
scheduling the GCL co-ed and other schools to really see where they're at. And obviously, overall, it didn't really matter because there was the difference in divisions. But now all of a sudden, their games really matter. When they take on Roger Bacon, when they take on Baden, maybe McNick. So it's going to be interesting to see where the Lancers can go, and maybe they do have, at least in my bracket, an upset or an upside to possibly go into the top five or the top six.
Yeah, and I mean, and despite the loss, I do like what I saw from them against Moore. And again, we talk about the ceiling, but coming out and taking a set, I think it was 25-17, like pretty, pretty dominant against a team like Moeller. That's a good sign. Obviously couldn't finish, but there's something there, I think, for sure from LaSalle. All right, and that's all we got for you. Here, any final thoughts?
I mean, we got a lot of more competitions and things are really starting to flesh out in both Division One, Division Two. So it's great to see the competition ramp up. Again, a lot of teams have officially broken into the 2025 season. So it's great to have everybody playing and great to see all of the competition, all the games out there.
100%. With that, this has been Ohio Volley Talk, and we will catch you next week.